Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
Welcome to Those Were the Days, the podcast where we investigate classic TV to see what kind of crimes it may have committed. Then we take it to court and figure out if it deserves to be free, to be seen, or if it's guilty of being bad TV and should be locked away. This is our podcast. And yeah, this is Those Were the Days. I'm your host tonight, Audie, and we are in a new month or a new theme. And we're talking about crossover TVs. We're talking about shows that have crossed over with other shows. We're sticking to one. We'll talk about the other, but I'm not making you watch too much. So now, before we get into our show tonight, I'll need my crack team of investigators to help me solve the case of good TV. First, the best forensic person there is, Steven.
Law, order. 2 words that scream primetime entertainment. Did it work? Let's find out.
Next, she'll slap the cuffs on you faster than you can sound a gavel, Amy.
Nobody puts Detective Briscoe in a corner.
So good. And last, the guy you don't want chasing you down the street, Travis.
So I'm sitting in my favorite watering hole the other day. It's like 10:30 in the morning, so I'm 2 beers deep. And some dude that used the phone just comes up, and the bartender's like, hey, there's a minimum here, bud. Come on. It's 10:30 in the morning. He said he was a cop. I don't know. Whatever. He flashed some badge and then just threw money on the counter and left. It was odd.
So, yeah, we're talking about TV crossovers. I'm kicking us off tonight talking about an episode of Law and Order. And it actually crossed over with Homicide, Life on the Street. So yeah, we're taking a turn to the more serious TV for a change. But as we do, let me ask everyone's relationship with either show. So Steven, why don't you kick us off?
Oh, yeah, let me go ahead and kick us off with I have no idea. I remember this coming on and hearing, bong, bong, Law and Order. I was like, that sounds boring. Let me see if there's any cartoons on. So no, I missed out on this completely.
All right, Travis, what about you?
So I definitely watched Law and Order. I watched more of one of the spinoffs, Law and Order SVU. When that came on, that was one that I watched a lot. But I definitely watched episodes of this. Love Jerry Orbach so much. Amy, your intro was choice.
That was great.
I love him.
It was one of those shows that just ran forever. And there were so many spin-offs of it and so many iterations, and they were all kind of the same thing with some different characters. Somehow they managed to set all of them in New York too. Amazing.
Well, I mean, there's no shortage of crime.
Right.
That's true.
Especially not in the 90s.
Yeah.
But no, it was a really, I always enjoyed the show for what it was. There were episodes that were better than others, but I watched a good amount of it.
Yeah. Amy, what about you?
Not big on cop shows, not big on procedurals. Now, I do love Jerry Orbach. He has a regular recurring character on Murder, She Wrote. He's a Boston PI named Harry. And so watching this episode, it was in my head canonically like after that. He just goes straight and gets a job on the force for real. And that was real good. This was also a prequel to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I thought was quite good.
Yep.
Yeah.
It really is just him, though.
It
Like,
is.
every time that something would happen, I was like, it's legitimately, this is canonically in my head. It is the same man.
Yeah, pretty much. Andre Brower, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're talking about Law and Order, which was and for me, I was all about Law and Order. I was all about all of it. So I definitely watched, regular Law and Order, Jerry Orbach, Benjamin Bratt, all the different people. And Travis is right. Law and Order is one of those shows that if you've worked in television, you were on Law and Order at some point or another.
Yeah.
You just were. Sometimes you played several different characters across different seasons, totally different. Um, Definitely got into SVU. One of the other ones, Criminal Intent, was one of my faves when Vincent D'Onofrio was on there, and it was
Oh, yeah.
basically their
Well-
version of uh, the Law and Order version of Sherlock Holmes, and D'Onofrio was just amazing.
Because
So
D'Onofrio is amazing. I mean,
right.
he's just
But his particular performance on that, like if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that some. Give that a shot and see what he does with his character there. It's just great.
I do remember
It-
Law and Order was an institution, or is an institution of television.
yeah,
Like you
it
have those
is, yeah.
because
shows
it's
that are
still
just
going.
yeah, they're like pillars of
Mhm.
TV, and everything else owes a debt to those pillars. And Law and Order
Mhm.
is certainly one of
Mhm.
those. I respect
Right.
it, even having not seen it. I know what it did for television.
Mhm.
Well, and procedurals like this too, they can run forever because they have a very it's like having a sitcom, but instead of having to rely on humor in your formula, you rely on very simple drama,
Hmm.
and the
Mhm.
stories can just get recycled. You can, I mean, that's why NCIS is still on the air
Yeah.
25
Right.
years later.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
actually, I
So
mean, so is Law and Order.
Yeah.
yeah.
Honestly.
So Law and Order, American police procedural and legal drama. That's kind of where it's more unique among others. Other shows that focus more on just the police procedural or the legal drama. They combine them both. Created by Dick Wolf for NBC, it has been on the air since September of 1990. I didn't realize this. It took an 11-year hiatus, the regular
Yep.
base show, and then came back in 2021, and it's still going. Um,
Mhm.
so again, it's the backbone for the franchise of the other Law and Order shows. There's SVU, which is still going. Criminal Intent. They had a couple others. They even had a couple different international versions. But the one we're watching, the main one, it's set in New York City and follows a two-part approach of starting with the crime, investigation, arrest, and all that, and then doing the trial of the defendant in a court of law. A lot of the plots are actually based on real cases, and some very recent, ripped from the headlines kind of cases. It's TV, so they take their liberties with the actual story and what happens, and sometimes they get to a quote unquote ending of a story that hasn't actually happened with a real life case. Um, and the regular base show Law and Order is the second longest running live action scripted American primetime series with 24 seasons.
Wow.
Number one is Law and Order SVU with 26 seasons.
Keeping iced tea in business.
Pretty much.
Mhm.
And then we have the second part that we didn't actually watch, but it crosses over with Homicide: Life on the Street. Now, Homicide was more of your typical police procedural that ran for 7 seasons on NBC from January 93 to May of 99. That one was actually based on Baltimore Sun reporter David Simon's book, Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets. It was a nonfiction book of his time following the Baltimore Police Department. He actually originally pitched it to Barry Levinson as a movie. And Levinson was like, no, this should be TV. This should be episodic. You can do a lot more with that.
Good call.
Right. Um, and so that's what he did. Especially because it would work better as TV and really take on what his book did, and what the series did was not your typical procedural, because it really exploded the myths of police work and provided a more no nonsense view of the lives of these inner city detectives, not showing them as heroes, but as realistic people on the job, showing the bleakness that comes with it at times, the repetitiveness, the spiritually draining part of it, the existential threat to one's psyche, glamour and glory free, but still a social necessity. Unfortunately, Homicide only lasted 7 seasons. Always struggled with the ratings, but was always critically applauded as the best show you're not watching.
It was
So
not exactly this, but it was kind of like it was The Wire before The Wire. Like
Oh.
right, it
that
pretty much
show
was. Yeah,
that critics loved and people that watched it really liked it, but it wasn't. I mean, The Wire was watched by more, but it was also HBO. This was network
right.
television, but like it was
Mhm.
that type of an idea where it didn't glamorize the police work.
Yeah, very much so. It very much was not about the glamour of it at all. Um, So we're talking about Law and Order season 6, episode 13, Charm City. It's the first full crossover episode with Homicide. Um, Earlier in Homicide, there was a cameo made by uh, a Law and Order detective, Mike Logan. Um, so he made a cameo at the end of an episode handing over Fugitive. But this is the first like full crossover. They did several of them with Homicide after this. So much so that, and we'll talk about him in this episode, but Richard Belzer's character of John Munch actually made the jump from Baltimore to New York. He was originally a Homicide Life on the Street character. They brought him into Law and Order, where he came on with SVU
He's
right
great.
after
Richard-
Homicide was canceled.
He is great. And Richard Belzer played John Munch from
Mhm.
1993 until 2016.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. That's putting in some
Yeah.
time.
It is.
Yeah. And not
Yeah.
just in Homicide and Law and Order. He crossed over into like
Mhm.
other things and other shows as Detective John Munch as well. I think he was in an X-Files episode.
I think so.
I
I
Yeah.
think so.
And
Wow.
he's also done stand-up comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Besides this, like that's the funniest thing is you see him, you're like, what? And
He's great. I
He
mean,
kinda-
I recognize his name and him despite not watching any of these shows. Like
Yeah.
he's a cultural icon for his performance as this detective. Like, yeah, like A Stigma says in the chat, he's a TV legend.
he
And
is.
Mhm.
you can't miss him.
Absolutely. Yep. So we watched Charm City. And the episode opens with the typical Law and Order intro. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it, but it just lays it out. In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police, who investigate crime, and the district attorneys, who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories.
Dun, dun.
Oh.
Right. This was,
gonna say.
dude,
It's just important.
you gotta have
Yeah.
it. This was so great to watch for the first time for me because I really didn't realize that it was split like that. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
it was
Mhm.
cops and then it was legal drama at the same time. That was kind of wild, and it wasn't like from the intro. I kind of started to gather, at least from the cold open. Yeah, I know you're about to get to. It's just
Right.
the dry material that,
Mhm.
despite being dry, is captivating. Like I know there's
Yeah, and
action,
they-
but the way they work with each other and the way the cops talk to each other is very Aaron Sorkin-ish. Like it's very
Mhm.
Yes.
dialogue heavy, but not a lot of inflection going on. Like it's just
Right.
well done. Very straight man. Everybody's straight man. Everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Pretty much, except Jerry Orbach. He gets the best one-liners
Oh,
and
yeah.
bangers of anybody.
He's something else. Yeah.
But yeah, the show always opens with this kind of cold open of something, somebody, somewhere doing something, and then we come up to the crime or something. In this case, it's a couple of beat cops, talking about marriage and assets and all that stuff, and the other one's like, don't get married.
Well, and one of the things with Law and Order that I thought was always interesting is the inciting crime in an episode. You very rarely see the crime itself. It's almost
Right.
always an aftermath of the crime. You're running.
Mhm.
These cops come up on somebody coming out of the subway. We don't see what happened in the subway. All we
Right.
get is the aftermath of it. And I kind of like that because it just lets you sort of fill in and make the crime
Sure.
worse than it
Well,
is
it's-
because your imagination is going to run away with you a little
When
bit.
it also comes back to the realism of the show and trying to depict, hey, a crime happened. We don't know how it happened, so we have to actually investigate it, and we go
Yeah,
along with that investigation.
It's necessary for the legal thing to have any suspense. Because if you know who did it, because you
Right.
watch the crime
Mhm.
take place, then you're sitting there wondering if they're going to figure it out too. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
we're actually
Good point.
just as clueless as the jury is for the most
Mhm.
part. We get a little bit more because we're with the cops.
Right.
But you kind of also get that, well, did he do it? We'll find out,
Mhm.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we've got people coming out of the subway. There was some kind of fire or something. Eventually, we skip ahead to all the paramedics and fire department there, and we get our two main cops in this episode, um, Lenny Briscoe and Ray Curtis, played by Jerry Orbach and Benjamin Bratt.
Baby Benjamin Bratt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
did not know he
remember.
was in
Yeah.
this.
I remember he was on every
Mhm.
magazine cover.
Yeah.
Just-
He was great. I had no we didn't get to the music, the opening theme song yet, right?
Not
Or did
yet.
we cross
No,
over
not
that?
yet.
Not
Okay.
yet.
All
Not
right.
yet.
I got thoughts on
Yeah.
that. Just let me know when we get
It's
there.
real good.
We're about to. But yeah, Orbach and Brat, and yeah, Baby Benjamin Brat. Like this is where I remember. This is how I know both of those guys from. Like everything after that. Like I didn't watch Dirty Dancing as a kid, but I watched Law and Order, so that's where I know Jerry Orbach from. So when Beauty and the Beast came out, I was like, oh, they got the Law and Order guy. Okay. So, but they're basically, just starting to figure out what's happening, and then we get our first Briscoe zinger of seeing the dead bodies, like "Good Morning America."
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm glad that has not aged an ounce. Like,
Yeah.
great. That's great. I'm so happy for us.
Yeah, this,
Yeah.
that's generally how we wake up in the morning every day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
What
mean,
fresh
look,
hell is this?
Yeah.
there were several things in this episode that
Yeah, I was
haven't
like,
aged at all.
Yeah.
And this episode is almost 30 years old.
That's
Yeah.
Just like to point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get to that wonderful theme song,
Gosh.
composed by legendary TV show composer Mike Post. If you've heard us talk about him, you've heard us talk about other theme songs he's composed, like that for the Rockford Files, A Team, Magnum PI, Quantum Leap, NYPD Blue, just to name a few.
He did this thing. I've only ever listened to some of it. Like I recognized it,
Mhm.
right? But I've never sat through
Mhm.
the whole intro of Law and Order before and listened
Yeah.
to the whole song. This
It's real
song
good.
takes you on a journey. Like it
really
is
does.
every genre just jam packed. You're like, okay, cool. We've got like some kind of 80s synth vibe. Where'd that saxophone come from? What just
Right.
happened? Why is there now slap bass? Where are we at?
Mhm.
What has happened? And it was just the best little adventure through
Yeah.
American music that I've ever been on.
Just that bass and bow, bow.
Yeah, right? It's just everything. They just threw the whole
Mhm.
kitchen sink in there. Like, let's just
And
whatever.
I think it's one of those things that Law and Order does deceptively well the entire show, is it sounds like it's so simple,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
but it is not, and it is done so well. So we get the theme song, and then we come back, and we get to pretty much regular police work where Briscoe and Curtis are just taking statements from everybody, trying to figure out what happened. So we're along with them trying to figure out what happened, who's alive, who saw what. We get a fireman talking to them about what happened and that it was, not a firebomb, but something toxic. Then there's a little thing where they won't let the detectives down into the subway because it's a
Arson
hazard scene,
investigation.
arson investigation.
How many arsons have you been to? Okay.
Okay.
Right.
It was real
Exactly.
good.
Got me.
Yep.
The interplay between departments and
Yep.
whatnot was great
Mhm.
because they're just
Quite
it's just a bunch of hounds circling each other
Right.
Mhm.
trying to
It re-
pee on the same fence
I was
post.
gonna say it's a pissing contest all
Yeah.
the way, for sure. They relent and go back and talk to their lieutenant Van Buren, played by S. Epitham Murkison. This is where I know her from too. Like, I see her, I think of Law and Order. She's on some doctor show now, and I'm still like, where? You should be somewhere with a gun. What are you doing in the hospital?
Man, they were chowing down on those sandwiches in this scene. I mean, it was just
they were.
full
There was a
mouth.
lot of snacking
Mhm.
in this Like, I was like at one point, and then they're like, because like later they're having like tea and cookies, and I was like, what
Uh-huh.
are we doing?
Yeah.
Hang on.
They were chowing
is
down those
this?
sandwiches, and Benjamin Bratt's drinking a little half-pint carton of milk like he's in elementary
Uh-huh.
school. And I was like,
Yeah.
what sandwich goes with white milk? Like, what are we...
Mhm.
I mean, peanut butter and jelly is the only
That's
answer,
the-
and
oh,
that is
yeah,
not
sure.
what that was.
No, he was
so-
eating some kind of deli meat thing, then
Mhm.
drinking
But
milk.
this is another instance where like the dialogue is where there isn't a ton of inflection and they're just sort of delivering it.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Like these scenes feel like real people at a job where they're like, we've
Yeah.
got 15 minutes to chow down. We're going to talk shop while we're doing it.
Yeah.
Have a
Mhm.
sandwich in my mouth. Oh, I got a milk from the commissary. They've got the little blue Greek coffee cups.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
that I always love to see.
Yep. And again, having a real sounding conversation, talking about what's going on. Again, Briscoe makes his little quip about hoping it's just some guy with a science experiment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, their lieutenant, she's just like, we should be so lucky if that's all it was. And then she, asks about the train. It's like, what train is it? Number 9, downtown. And she's like, from Harlem? Like, yep. So she tells him to go talk to forensics. And that's when they figure out that it was a gas bomb intended to hurt and kill, and specifically using metallic arsenic.
There's so
And
much science. Then
Mhm.
science happens on the
Mhm.
whiteboard.
right,
It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
good.
I don't know if any
Mhm.
of it was real, but it looked good. It looked sciencey enough for me.
It was close
Sure.
enough,
Yeah.
for what we needed. And so from there, we get to more police work of them just getting on the phones, calling around, trying to figure things out, calling different chemical companies, seeing what they can figure it out.
What I love about this though is that they're not calling as cops.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And it's really good. And that was the part at which I was like, man, it really is. It's just like Harry in Murder She Wrote. Like he's just like trying to get it done. He has no authority.
Yep.
There was a
So
lot.
good.
There was no announcing of "I'm a cop" to anyone anywhere at any
No.
time, except the one
No.
time that Travis alluded to in the intro. But other than
Yeah.
that, like cops are just doing what they're doing and never telling anyone why. I would be
Mhm.
more willing to help if I knew I was trying to help a police investigation, but clearly they don't believe that's the case
Right.
because
Mm.
people don't trust cops, right? So it's kind of like this
Not
weird
as much.
space
I
to be.
mean, we're not that far removed from Rodney King at this point. So you've
That's a
got
good
that
point.
mentality
Yeah, they do mention it too.
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
cops not being the most trusted. So they find it, there's a lot of times like this where they find it's a lot easier to just not be a cop and try to get the info the best way they can.
Yeah.
Like Briscoe saying he needs it for his kid's science experiment.
Yeah,
But
or metallic arsenic for
Uh-huh.
my
right.
kid's science experiment.
Yep.
Yeah. But then
So,
Well, if
there's
I ever
also
need to
like
do electroplating, I gotta know where to
Mhm.
start.
Yep.
the idea though that we're not going to announce that we're cops. Okay, when you're calling somewhere, I can kind of maybe get that.
Yeah.
What they do later on when we get to it
Yeah.
was probably not a great move on their part.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
I
Yeah.
know where
There's a
you're
few
going
not great
to.
moves.
There's a few of them, yeah. So, so they figure out it's a regulated carcinogen. You need an OSHA ID to even buy the stuff. They aren't sure what else to do from that, so they go talk to the survivors in the hospital. So they're doing that, talking to people, and then they happen upon one of the guys who left the train before the explosion, George Bell. Uh, talk to him and realize he was actually a witness of whoever possibly did this. After they, share with him, it came from a brown paper bag. He's like, yeah, there was a guy sitting next to my son, and he had a paper bag, but he left the train and wasn't carrying it. It's like, how do you remember that? It was like, well, you remember the only white guy on the train. And so they take him back to the police precinct where they do an artist sketch with the most rudimentary
Okay,
computer program
alright.
I've ever seen.
Okay. It was so good. It was so good. I'm like, now we could just sit him down with the Sims character creator and we're probably fine. You know what I mean? We're like, here, this is Baldur's Gate 3. Please make the man you saw.
Mhm.
That's
Oh,
a
it was
good
so
point.
bad.
It was
Yeah.
like
I
kid
loved it
picks.
so much.
Kid picks
Yeah.
91. Let's
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
Yeah, part of me wonders if there was some kind of sponsorship deal with the computer for some reason, because I know they've done it before with regular sketch artists on this
Mhm.
show.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, it's a cool idea. It's just like the reality of
oh
it was
yeah,
very funny.
That's the
yeah, for
guy
sure.
right
Like
there.
that's
Uh-huh.
just a guy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is a human. Yes.
That is
Correct.
just a
And
man.
what about the hair? And it's like a bunch of keystrokes, and
Yeah. It's like-
there's like no hardly menu at all for anything. So
So good.
UI was not
F5
our thing.
for 5 o'clock shadow.
yeah,
We'd only
well,
had user interfaces for like 8 years, Audie. It's the brand new.
right. Well, especially for a TV drama, like I can only imagine what their budget was in trying to figure out how to do this at all.
Yeah, sure.
I loved it.
So they apparently got the sketch good enough. And then George Bell
Send
told
it
him,
to everyone. Yes.
yeah, send it
Absolutely.
everywhere. He had an army jacket, a red scarf, and boots.
Well, I did like too, though, when they say like send it to all the precincts and NCIC. He might not be
Yes.
local.
That was
Yeah.
cool.
Right. And that's where we get our tag in from Baltimore and our guys at Homicide Life on the Street. So we start off with in their police room with Pembleton and Munch.
And we
And
get the full munch too.
we get the full Munch. And telling us about how the jury is the big toe of democracy, and you stub it and you get a cramp in the calf of your leg and you're limping along. We as citizens end up in our anarchy.
Mu-
Incredible.
Munch was so great because he is like the straight up conspiracy theorist,
Mm-hmm.
and like this is what he does all the time,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. And Richard Belzer is just so perfect at it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like he almost gets up to the line of that crazy uncle. Like, you can't possibly believe that, but he brings a gravitas to it somehow that you're like, I could kind of get where you're coming from. Much stop
Like
it.
you
You're
might have
making me
something
wonder.
there, and I don't like it.
Yeah,
But also, is
exactly.
that what you want in a cop?
Right? Yeah.
Like, it's
That-
fine when it's Fox Mulder. Like,
Right.
that's okay. He's not playing with anyone's life, usually.
No, but we see later why Munch is so good at what he does. Again, not necessarily right, but good. So then we get our third detective, Bale, is coming in, and he apparently got the wire from New York about the bomber, and brings it, and they realize, especially Pembleton, who is played by Andre Brower.
He was good.
Mhm.
Again, this is the role I remember him from first, so I always think back to Homicide: Life on the Street. I didn't watch it as much as Law and Order, but I remember it enough. Like, this is my first knowledge of Andre Brower, and where I
Which is
always go
fine
back
because
to.
it's the same character,
Right. Mm-hmm.
just younger.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. He definitely grows in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He just carries it. But he apparently remembers the MO from a church bombing 5 years ago that was never, and it's the case that was never closed, and everything just kind of matches. So then we get Bayless and Pembleton going to New York, talking to Van Buren about everything. Briscoe and Curtis are there, and apparently they decided they really needed to go to New York and get in on this. And she was like, "Yeah, that's great. We'll let you know."
Yeah.
Like, what?
Phone
Excuse
calls
me?
would have handled a little bit of that so they
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah.
But I mean, they got to
Mhm.
do more investigating. But I felt real bad for them. I was like, did they just drive all the way there? They got to turn around and go home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's in the way he puts it too. I didn't drink 3 coffees on Amtrak on the way here
Mhm.
just to be
Yeah,
told.
they didn't drive. They
We'll
took
let
the
you know.
train.
Yeah.
Right.
I want his hat also. That dude was dapper.
Yup.
Uh-huh.
Like, I need that in my life.
Man, I will never be, ever be as cool as Andre Brower putting
No.
that hat on in
Yeah.
that shot.
No.
So good.
Yeah.
No, you won't. Let it go.
Mhm. I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So our Baltimore guys leave, and because of the Baltimore connection, they do actually put out an APB on possible Maryland plates for whoever this could be. But Pembleton, Andre Brower's character, thinks it's the exact same guy, so he's starting calling chemical places in Baltimore.
Which seems
And
reasonable.
Yeah.
very reasonable. He got a copy of the police sketch, so he's sending that and trying to figure that out. And then we get to him and Bayless talking about it, and they're like, "Well, we need to fax the thing. We'll just go back to the police precinct." And Pembleton's like, "No, we won't."
See, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is why a federal investigation service is necessary. Because of this kinds of nonsense between two police departments, both
Uh-huh.
trying to get the win.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Again, the pissing contest.
Stupid.
It really is stupid, but that's Pembleton's character. Like he is the like I'm going to catch this person.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Especially with his involvement of the previous thing in Baltimore with the church bombing. So then we get back to Briscoe and Curtis tracking down, figuring out a Baltimore car that was stolen. They go to check it and more or less kind of track down the guy to a hotel that he was staying at.
The impound was really
And
great for me because I saw a really awesome green pickup in the background that I wanted.
of course she did.
I was like, look
The
at that.
impound was great because the guy was so unfazed.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like,
oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you run the impound lot in New York City, you are unfazed. But
Yeah.
what did he do?
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it,
Yeah,
man.
he killed
Don't.
somebody.
I like that he was like, the warrants will be by later. Okay. Just like,
Yeah, he's just
All
like,
right.
okay.
Great.
So they don't find anything specific, but they more or less use their police powers and kind of figure out where the guy stayed. They find the room and they basically wait for the guy to come back.
Okay, but wait, because it's really good. All right, so this is the third hotel they've tried,
Right.
and they walk in, and the guy's like, "All right, I got room, whatever. I got room, whatever. How many hours do you think you need?" So good.
Mhm.
Absolutely incredible. And then they flash their badges and he's like, whatever's happening in the rooms, I don't know anything about
Right.
it. Unbelievable.
Well,
Mhm.
and his introduction too, he's watching soap operas in his office because he
Yeah.
comes out saying somebody so and so was like, I don't even remember what it
Something
was. but you
about
could
like
tell.
either gonna get killed or whatever.
Yeah, I
Killed
had
or
to wait for the
married or
commercial break.
something. Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
So they figure
But
out the room of whoever this is, and
Ronald
basically,
Reagan.
yeah,
Right.
Ronald Reagan.
mhm.
Um, he paid up for 5 days. It's like the third or fourth day, so they decide to basically stay in the room and stake out until he comes back. Meanwhile, our Baltimore guys, Pembleton, actually figures out the actual name of the guy from Baltimore who it possibly could be, Brian Egan.
Yep.
And he's on the phone in a bar talking to Munch about it. He gets done, and that's when the bartender makes him pay for something because he used the phone in the bar. He tries to show him his badge, and the guy's like, I don't
It gets
recognize
real
that badge.
racist.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is where it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where you start to get the angle of the show. If you didn't get it from the train
Yeah.
ride, you're
Mhm.
getting it from
Yeah.
this side of things.
Yeah. So he pays a couple bucks just to cool things down and gets out of there. So he's outside. Him and Bayless are now getting or Bayless was getting a hot dog and appreciating it.
Well, because it's a great character moment because
Right.
Pembleton comes out of the bar and he's like, now I remember why I hate this town.
Yep.
And here's Bayless just half a hot dog in his mouth, like, oh, I kind of like it.
Yeah. And then he schools
And then
him
he
on,
calls
like,
it pedestrian,
right.
which I was
Yes.
like,
Mhm.
see, same character.
Yep. And schools him on everywhere he should actually be eating food in New York.
Ugh, phenomenal.
So, and then we cut to Baltimore where Munch is actually going to Brian Egan's house. Goes there, and apparently nobody but Brian's son is home.
Yeah, and this is all very shady.
I don't
Yeah,
like
this
any
is-
of it. I was uncomfortable
None
the
of
whole
it's
time.
good.
Yeah.
Yep. This is one of those things where this is the reasons police do get a bad rap because they use
Yeah.
their power
Yeah.
in not the greatest of ways. He doesn't tell him he's a cop. He talks to the kid. Now, the kid wasn't entirely smart either, and just like, what are you doing? Just
Yeah, no.
not asserting any power that he doesn't actually have anyways, but he doesn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Um, but it's funny that Munch never ever mentions that he's a cop. Just lets the kid's assumptions run wild and still talks to him, and the kid's talking right back to him like, "Oh yeah, I mean, yeah."
And this
Well,
is
he-
this
Munch never-
Baltimore. This is the murder capital of America, and you're just opening your doors and letting a guy
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, because Munch doesn't even like get invited in. The door
No.
opens and he just steps into the house.
Right.
And the kid's like, I think you should leave. And he's just like sitting on the couch.
Yep. Just sits down. Basically gets enough information. It's just like, all right, I'll talk to you later, kid. It makes it sound like he's like a bookie or something,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
So, and basically finds out that Egan is coming back on the next train down from New York.
Mm-hmm.
So then we cut to Briscoe and Curtis in the hotel room, waiting for whoever is going to come. Somebody unlocks the room, and turns out it's an old lady.
And here's a point where maybe announcing that you're police,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they just grab whoever is at the door,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and it's an old woman, and they grab her and like,
Presumably
hand over,
homeless. Like that's
Yeah.
the assumption.
hand over her mouth, like shh,
Yeah.
type of thing,
Yeah.
and don't say anything at first. Guns drawn as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much of it is bad.
And then when he's whispering to her, he's like, "I'm gonna take my hand off your mouth, and you're not gonna scream or whatever." I'm like, "This is the part where you say, I'm a police officer doing an investigation, and I'm gonna take my hand off your mouth." And I'm
Yep.
it's like the extra 2 lines, and you have settled her
Mhm.
down.
Exactly.
But he doesn't do that.
No. But basically get from her that a guy gave her the key to the room, and he's heading to Penn Station. So they head there. Basically, find a guy that matches the description of the police sketch. He's wearing a green jacket. He's got a red scarf. He's wearing boots. Got to be the guy.
Hmm. I
Um,
loved
like-
this scene.
Yes,
'Cause,
I loved how it all played out.
It's the only person wearing army surplus in all of New York
Uh-huh.
City.
Sure,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
just so
he
happens.
This guy's the worst criminal ever. He didn't change his nothing. He didn't change his hair. He didn't change his outfit. He's just
Yeah.
gonna go ahead and be around the same way. He's terrible at covering his tracks. He's not a smart
Yeah.
criminal.
Mhm.
But this
Although I
whole
will say, based
This is
on how
before-
the episode ends, it makes sense why he would be like that.
yeah, I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wait, this is
We just-
before we had true crime podcasts. We didn't,
Also true.
you couldn't like.
Yeah,
Right.
Dateline was
But
all
I-
we had to get out of
Mhm.
to understand how crime
Mhm.
works.
But I love how this whole scene plays out because they will come. We start the shot on the guy on the
Mhm.
Yeah.
train platform,
Mhm.
and then we are moving around and we're seeing Briscoe and Curtis, and they're walking along and they're just looking around, and like they never make direct eye contact with the guy, but they come
Right.
up front to camera
Mhm.
and are having their conversation. Like, what do you think? He goes, "Oh, the wardrobe matches." I just love that. And then,
That's
like,
so cool.
look back up.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the way they surround
was-
him without like
They
just
turn
casually.
back around. Yeah.
That
Mhm.
was just
And literally, no one else on the platform is more than vaguely disturbed.
perfection. Right.
They're just all looking over like, well,
Good evening,
another day, I
America.
guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So they slap the cuffs on him, and just as they're going, here comes Pembleton and Bayless. And we get another Briscoe zinger. It's like finders
Mhm.
keepers, boys.
That was real good.
And then we cut to them interrogating him back at the police precinct. And he's just not giving them anything. And then the Baltimore guys, who know a lot more and haven't shared that information, get their turn.
Yep. 'Cause
And they
that's
start
how it works.
Yep.
So they start pushing it. He's saying he doesn't want to say anything. And then they start throwing out his wife's name and his son's name and his home address. And then they mention Charm City back in Baltimore and the church bomb. And say, with this is 20 dead. That's Ted Bundy territory. And we finally get a crack. And he's like, I didn't know there were kids at the church. And as soon as he says that, Van Buren comes in and interrupts because they've been pushing it.
Yeah.
So they get outside and now we start to argue the legalities of this interrogation.
Mm-hmm.
Because the guys are operating under the way they would handle it in Baltimore. And they're trying to tell him, well, he's in New York. He's staying in New York. We have to go by the rules and laws in New York.
Yeah. Now we're
Which are,
getting into the order
Constitutional,
part.
but it's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We've gone from law. Now we're in order. We got to
Now
do.
go-
Yep.
Yep. And we get to, one of the stalwarts of the Law and Order series, Sam Watterson as the executive ADA Jack McCoy.
I loved him.
I love Sam Watterson. If you have not
Yes.
watched The Newsroom,
Yes.
man, he's
Mhm.
so good in that.
Oh, he's
Exactly.
fantastic.
He has so much fun with that character. But this is one of those roles where this is where I know him from, and he'll always be Jack McCoy.
I couldn't help but in some ways cast this show with Muppets as I was watching it because several
Sure.
of them have
Yeah.
a very
Why
Muppet
not?
look to
Mhm.
them, and Sam Watterson
yeah.
is definitely Sam the Eagle in my mind.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I couldn't help it. I was just like, why is that guy Sam the Eagle? Richard Belzer also had a Muppet feel to me for some
Mhm.
reason.
Yep.
And I'm like, have they done this before? Because it sounds
Yep.
right. But yeah.
And Steven, if you're wondering, throughout the entire series, there's always pretty much male executive ADA with a female ADA, a very good-looking female ADA by his side working.
Okay.
That's how it
That's
goes.
how it works.
It's not quite CW, but it's close.
Oh, well, the Muppets have done Law and Order Special Letters Unit.
Okay.
Just-
There you go.
I've probably
That's
seen that on Sesame Street.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have probably seen it.
Yep. So yeah, we're definitely get into the order part of this. And they're gonna seek the murder in the first degree, which carries the death penalty. But our boy Egan has a lawyer coming in town from Baltimore who just doesn't know how things work in New York. But I'm
I
gonna
hate
try
this
my
man.
I
darndest.
hate him.
With
Oh my
every
God.
fiber of my being.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have several notes that are just about how punchable his face is. And
He's
how much I
so
wanna just
punchable.
Kick him in the
Mhm.
taint.
So
Yep.
punchable.
He would
So-
do well in My Cousin Vinny. The way he approaches everything is very
Mhm.
very.
He's
Just by golly.
yeah, he's almost the Southern lawyer from Venture Brothers. And it's just the it's so bad.
I'm mad at every
Mhm.
argument he makes.
Yep.
Like,
Oh,
and
this-
how did so much of it should have been thrown out?
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like, this has
And-
no bearing on anything.
right.
Again,
Objection, relevance.
Yeah.
The testimony to the people they get in this series who play bit characters like this, like he might be in the series a couple more times as totally different characters, but in this
Sure.
episode he's this character that he plays it so well that we hate him so
Oh yeah.
much.
Just punchable.
Well, because he's just got that constant smirk, like he knows exactly what
Mhm.
he's doing,
Right.
Yeah.
and that it's working,
Yeah.
and you just
It's
wanna
wrong
drop kick
and
him.
he's winning and it makes you mad.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because first they're arguing to change a venue because he doesn't think his client can get a fair trial where he's at. Argues that, and Jack's like, well, it could go to a federal case, but I want to do it, so let's do it in Westchester. And then we get more legal shenanigans back and forth because this is what happens a lot of times before they ever get to the courtroom. You get a lot of the legal arguments, you get a lot of the motions play back and forth, sent back and forth between the lawyers, and the lawyers talking about what's going to happen, what can happen, what should happen.
Mhm.
And they basically get to where they're actually talking about the interrogation, how it was handled, who said what, how it was said, to the point where Jack McCoy has to argue over what a shrug actually means legally.
Yeah, kids, this is why if you are ever questioned by the police, whether you've done anything or not, you just say lawyer.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's it. Like, I
Yep.
feel like that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Don't
that's
say
like, I know we
any,
can't do that. Like, I know we gotta
like-
get the story out,
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for those playing along at home, the first word and only
Lawyer.
word out of your mouth is lawyer, and then they have to
Lawyer.
Mhm.
stop and leave you alone and get
Right.
you
but
one.
Yep. So, and
Parlay.
because of
Stop that.
so because all of this hinged on a shrug and the way he actually said he didn't want to talk, all of his confession is actually thrown out and excluded.
Mhm.
And Pembleton's like, well, we'll just take him to to Baltimore. It's fine. And Jack's like, yeah, see, here's how the law actually works. When it's thrown out here, it's thrown out everywhere. Good job. So then we cut to Bayless having dinner with Claire Kincaid, played by Jill Hennessy. She was very much a stalwart on the show for a long time before she left and did her own thing. If you don't remember her other show, her big claim to fame was the show Crossing Jordan.
I've heard of
She
that.
was
Oh
a,
yeah.
a forensics person. So kind of doing the police procedural from the forensics room. And she's done lots of other stuff since. It was really funny. I was reading up, and at one point she had to take a break for some reason, and she has a twin sister that played her character in Law and Order for a couple episodes here and there because of that.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. So they're having dinner. Bayless is clearly hitting on her, wanting to hit on her as they're talking about the case. And he basically offers up to her the witness from the church bombing to kind of tie things together. And then he definitely hits on her.
It was
and she
gross
just-
and unnecessary. Like it didn't go
Mhm.
anywhere, and I found it
Uh-huh.
pointless.
Yeah, you know, it was. They did what they had to do.
Yeah, I get it.
So then we get to the actual courtroom scene. And it's not. I will say this: I miss the typical New York City courtroom that they're usually in. This one they're in Westchester County, different venue, so it feels smaller than where they're normally at.
Yeah, it's like upstate-ish.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So we get the courtroom. We've got George Bell testifying about, seeing the defendant, the brown paper bag, and Egan's lawyer, as smug as he is, points out that he remembers him because he was the one white guy. It's like, yeah.
And all he wants to do is plant the seed of reasonable doubt
Right.
Mhm.
that this could have been somehow racially motivated.
Well,
Yeah.
and
That's
that
his
was the whole thing
whole-
about the change of venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that he very specifically says that where they were, it would be a majority minority jury.
Right.
Mhm.
And that
that's
the one white guy
nonsense.
wouldn't get a fair trial somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
So-
so mad.
yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
was just
ticked me off.
fuming for the whole
Well,
back
and-
half of this
and
episode.
it gets even better because next we've got Curtis on the stand testifying about the sketch. And then the lawyer is asking him about other passengers on the train who actually had records and all happened to be black.
Mm-hmm.
And Curtis is just like, yeah, but no, I didn't look into those because that's not where the evidence took us. And then he gets his last little punch in that was just the worst, where he's, asking about Curtis's background. You're Puerto Rican, right?
Yeah, it's
then we
messed
got
up.
Irrelevant. Objection.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
get the Jack McCoy objection.
What are we?
Uh-huh.
And to credit,
Ugh.
the judge did kind of give him a little slap down, like, all right, no,
Yeah.
Yep.
like, you don't get to do that.
Yeah. Again, the thing about this show and the way they portray things is everything is pretty realistic. The judges are pretty, non-biased and listening to every argument, trying to listen to every argument on its merit as much. But at this point, the judge is definitely like, okay, stop it with that. And then we get our witness from Baltimore, Miss Chapman, talking about her seeing the guy at the church bombing, but she never actually saw the guy's face, just that he was a white guy. And then the lawyer asks her if she still goes to that church. She's like, no, I don't. It's like, and where do you attend? And we get that she's a Muslim. And then he brings up Lewis. I couldn't get over the way they pronounce Farrakhan.
Yeah, I
time.
couldn't
Yeah.
either. I was like, is that the same Farrakhan I'm thinking of?
Yeah. For those at home, yes, they mean Louis Farrakhan. But
Farrakhan.
they kept saying Farrakhan.
That's Baltimore for you. That Maryland accent is a heck
Mhm.
of a thing.
Yeah. So, and with that one, we definitely get all right, in my chambers from the judge.
Yeah.
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 Where he's definitely like, okay, look, you got to cool it down because that objection stands. We don't need any more of that crap. but at the same time, he's like, the other arguments you're making, I can't rule against. So
Mm-hmm.
we go back. Pembleton's on the stand now, talking about how he tracked down Egan to the chemical lab, and the Egan's lawyer's like, how many other open cases are you flying all over the country to solve?
Which is irrelevant
Yeah, doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
because you're not going to fly all over the country, but Baltimore, New York is not.
Yeah, that's
far,
right
quite
there.
frankly.
Yep.
One
Mhm.
train ride and 3 cups of
And
coffee
if
away.
it's a crime that's related to what just happened, and he thinks that he can help them figure that one out and stop it from happening again,
Right.
that
Right.
seems perfectly reasonable.
And so we're done with testimony. Jack rests his case, and surprisingly, so does the defense. Then we get another scene of the lawyers talking. This happens a lot. Like after the trial,
Yeah, the DAs are always like just having a little powwow, talking out their strategy, what they're
Yep.
going to do, and
talking out
all
the
that.
law, talking about what's going to happen. They're pretty sure they've done enough. They've laid out the evidence, and then
The
Jack being
worst
Jack.
closing arguments in the
Yeah.
history.
They were real bad.
Yeah.
Both of them were
so
terrible.
bad,
Mhm.
wildly irrelevant.
Yep.
I mean, I understand, like they're relevant
Mhm.
to the story,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but come
Yeah,
on, man.
but I mean, closing statement. Egan's lawyer basically ends with, "We can't blame Whitey for everything."
Wild.
Yeah.
Like I already like it just exponentially every sentence, everything that
So
came out of that
punchable.
character's mouth just made
Mhm.
me want to just.
I hated
Yep.
it so much.
I wanted to throw
So
vegetables
punchable.
at him while they were still in the cans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
soup for my family.
hmm
Absolutely.
Then we get to McCoy's closing statement. He basically he does what Jack does. He lays out the facts of the case and he's like, these are the facts. I've told you everything I could possibly tell you, and everything points to him.
But he starts it off in the most TV drama way
Yeah.
possible,
Oh,
taking his law books, dropping them in the bin, and
I love
saying,
it.
"Guess I don't need these anymore."
right.
Yeah.
Like
Incredible.
it's amazing.
Incredible. Golf claps all around.
Yep. And then makes the argument that just because we don't have people in chains doesn't mean we don't still have a racial divide in this country
And
because of the
that was
way
the
we
that was the wild part about the defense's thing. Is it's like slavery ended like 100 years ago. Why are you
Mhm.
even it's like first of all, you're the one who's bringing it up, my man.
Yeah, you're the
Right.
only
Second
one
of all-
talking about it.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, white
Thou
people
doth
suck.
protest too much.
And again, I
Mhm.
want to point out that this episode is nearly 30 years old.
Oh yeah, no,
Oh.
it's still wildly relevant, but
Yeah.
And will
it's-
continue to be.
If nothing
Yeah.
Forever.
worse now.
Yeah. For all
Yeah.
kinds of
yeah,
reasons.
we've taken several backward steps.
Mm.
Anyways, we're talking about the show. We're talking about the
It's
show.
fine.
Um,
It's fine.
Fine.
it's fine. We're talking about the show.
Doing a podcast.
So the jury comes back and they end up siding with our boys and find him guilty of murder in the first degree. We get off the first few names, but
Phew.
he is convicted for all 20 dead. We get a little scene with Curtis and Pembleton in the bar. Curtis trying to be like, "Hey, we did it. We won." I was just like, "Yeah, okay, great,
Yeah.
sure. People are still dead. Thanks." Um, and Pembleton basically is the one that starts laying it out. Like, you think this guy could have handled all of this and done all of this all by himself?
Yeah.
To which we cut to McCoy and Kincaid going to Egan in prison, trying to ask that very question, uh, knowing that there's no way he could have done it on his own. There's got to be co-conspirators. Who are they? And then that's when we get Egan's really sure of himself attitude, and basically telling them they have no idea what they're doing. He's only the tip of the iceberg. Um,
Cool.
and you can't
Yeah.
stop what's
Great.
coming.
It does
Yeah.
feel that way, doesn't it?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
like
Mm.
at the time of watching this, if I were watching this in 1996, I
Yeah,
would have been
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
That's a rough ending.
Yeah.
And what I know
now
now,
it's just like
Yeah.
it was
it's
like
a
that's
Monday.
a very
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
It's a
Monday.
Monday.
It is Monday.
You're not wrong.
And
We wish you were.
I wish you
Yeah.
were wrong. I thought this was ridiculous in 1996.
Lord.
Oh, you guy with your
Uh-huh.
8 people that are as bad as you about something. No,
Right.
turns out there's a lot going on under there.
Nope. So, and that's where we end this episode. And a lot of times, Law and Order will end this way. It will end on the good guys won, but did they
But
really?
did they?
Yeah. there you
Yeah.
go.
Are things any better now yet? No. So
Whack-a-mole.
we
Yeah.
do get the rest of the story in Homicide: Life on the Street, in their episode of season 4, episode 12, For God and Country.
Oh.
So they go back to Baltimore. They figure out the linked case from there, figure things out, and kind of conclude the story on that end. The one other funny thing I remember reading about this is there is a very comical subplot in that episode of Homicide in which Munch discovers that after one of his ex-wives divorced him, she had a brief relationship with Briscoe.
Oh boy,
Well,
I
Yeah.
love that.
Like they get to talking and figure it out, and it's just like, wait, what?
Amazing. She's got a
So-
type.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that was Law and Order. So I'm gonna start with Steven. What'd you think?
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. I've been trying to contain it. I adored this show. I didn't expect to because I was like, Law and Order sounds boring. But I have
Mhm.
never been so drawn in by legal mumbo jumbo in my life. I was just all about it. I wanted to put on a trench coat and go wandering around with my hat
Yeah.
looking for trouble. It was just the best. Thank you for dragging this into my life. I went down, I was like, Stephanie, Law and Order is awesome. Like, it's really got me. I'm in.
Nice. You're welcome. It's funny because I remember saying it last week, and I definitely remember the reactions. Like, oh, what? Okay. So,
Yep.
glad you enjoyed it. Travis, what about you?
I mean, it was a great trip down memory lane in terms of like I used to watch shows like this a lot, and
Mhm.
so there was a big nostalgia kick for it. I loved seeing Andre Braugher and
Yeah.
Richard Belzer. Like
Mhm.
they were great. I mean, Homicide: Life on the Street lost both of them. Like that cast was amazing, and Belzer died in 2023. Brower died in
Yeah.
2023. Yaphet Kotto was on that show.
Yeah.
He passed away in 2021. Like
Mhm.
the last couple of years have been rough on the cast of that show.
Yeah.
But they were so good. I will say though, I wouldn't actively avoid watching more of the show, but it's rough. It's rough to watch these days for me.
Mhm.
Maybe I just watched too much of it when I was younger, or my tastes have changed. I wouldn't like go out of my way to not watch it, but I'm also not pining to watch more
Sure.
right now.
Yeah.
But it's
that's
very
fair.
well done.
Yeah.
And the casting is great. Like Jerry Orbach, fantastic. I will watch more Jerry Orbach, Benjamin Bratt. Like they were great. Sam
Mhm.
Waterston too. So I love Sam Waterston. I remember watching in school. We watched The Killing Fields, and I think that was where I first saw him because I think I saw that before I saw an episode of Law and Order, and that movie affected me a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was very good. It was very, very cool to watch it again. I'm not gonna clamor to watch it right away, but I very much appreciate the show still.
Sure. All right, Amy, what about you?
All right, so I'm going to be real with you. I spent all week dreading watching this because I knew it was not for me. Now,
Sure.
I will say I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, but
Mhm.
I did have to get up and make a cup of tea. And then I had to get up and get some ice cream. And then
Mhm.
I did have to, like, I just had to, I just need a little break.
Yep.
Mhm.
I did play a couple games of Marvel Snap on my phone. Like it was not, it's
Mhm.
not for me. But like
Sure.
Travis said, like it is extremely well done. And
Right.
I very much appreciate that. But it is not for me.
Sure.
I do love Jerry Orbach
Oh yeah, he's great. And again,
though.
has some of the best one-liners in television
Mm-hmm.
history throughout this series. There's a lot of that goes on, and he does them better than anybody. So, yeah, this was. I watched a lot of Law and Order, so this was just a comfort watch for me. So, it was great to revisit it, and there's plenty to watch if you want to watch more. There's Law and Order SVU. Um, if you want even harsher stories, more
Yeah.
intense stories. Um, SVU stands for Special Victims Unit, usually focusing on some kind of sexual trauma. Um,
That one's
I don't think I
real
could
rough.
watch that one.
yeah,
I don't
that
need
one.
all the DNA collection stuff in my brain.
They have some rough episodes. They have some wild episodes. Like Scott Johnson talks about one where they're talking to some gamer dude, and it just goes off, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Well,
I
yeah,
can't
that's
watch certain
You
shows
know?
that are after a certain amount of shock value, just what they can
Yeah.
put on TV. And
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mhm.
I watched maybe one episode of that or half an episode. I was like, this is just a lot. I'm
Mhm.
watching the
I
network version of Saw, and
Right.
I'm just had
Oh
enough.
Yeah.
my.
and
There's
I watched
times.
I watched a lot of SVU.
Yeah.
That was my Law and Order show to watch. And it's another case of like it's such a fantastic cast. These
Oh,
shows
sure.
had so
Mhm.
many great characters and the actors like because you get SVU has Mariska Hargitay
Yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
Vincent, um,
Christopher Maloney.
um, Christopher Maloney, and then you've got Richard Belzer. They bring in Ice T
Ice
a little
T.
while later
Yeah.
Yeah.
as a detective, and he's great. Like everybody in it is fantastic, but it's rough.
What a
It's just
career
Yeah.
rough.
change for Ice-T. Gone from
Oh
cop
yeah.
killer to playing a cop.
It was a
Ice-T,
big deal when he got cast,
I
for
bet.
sure.
Ice-T has a quote that I really like. He said, the only thing harder than being the Mac is staying the Mac. And I mean,
Yeah.
he's pulling it off. Good job, Ice-T. You're staying in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, again, I would recommend Law and Order, uh, Criminal Intent too, and watch you some Vincent D'Onofrio uh, being a cop. Like that one, I
That
really
sounds
enjoyed.
good.
It's really good. He's so good. Um, but yeah, that was Law and Order, and a little bit of Homicide Life on the Street for our first crossover. Did we get any feedback anywhere about any of this?
We did. We got an
Sweet.
email from Sean. Sean, aka A Stigma, said, I honestly haven't seen very many episodes of Law and Order, but what an episode you picked with a stellar cast as well. It's crazy to think an actor like Leo Burmester can be so likable in The Abyss from 1989 and 7 years later be someone so easy to hate. Hope everyone's doing okay in 2025 so far and didn't get hit too hard with the recent bad weather. Sincerely, Sean, A Stigma on Blue Sky. Great. Thank you so much for that email.
Nice.
And he sent pictures
For
so
sure.
I could remember the two actors. So we've got Leo Burmester in both roles, and I recognize and remember him from The Abyss. So yeah,
Yeah.
good call.
Very
Awesome.
cool. Yeah, and if you have any thoughts, definitely let us know. You can always email us. Those were the days show at gmail.com. Those days show dot ski
Blue ski.
dot
You know how it
social.
works.
Yeah.
The blue sky, and then all of our own personal socials will be in the show notes. You can find us all over the place. So definitely let us know what you thought about Law and Order. Definitely let us know what you think about the show Steven's going to bring to us next week.
Yes. I'm going to tell you, we're going on, it's going to be some lighter fare. It's not going to be nearly as dramatic
All
as
right.
before. So I racked my brain over crossovers and I was like, what could I do? So I went to the Googles and I'm like,
Yeah.
give me a list of crossover shows. And I found a gym, a little bit more modern than I'm typically going with y'all.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. It's all the way to 1999, right up on the
Wow.
edge. King
Oh,
of
boy.
Queens.
Oh my gosh.
Season 6, episode 9, Road Rage, Rayge, where we get a special crossover episode with Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know.
Nice.
I used to watch Everybody Loves Raymond every night while eating dinner with Stephanie.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm pretty excited to watch this episode. King of Queens, Everybody Loves Raymond. King of Queens season 1, episode 9. That is streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right. Paramount Positive. Sweet.
Yes.
Awesome. You said what season? Season 1?
Season 1, episode 9.
Okay.
Yep, there were a couple. Everybody Loves Raymond and King of Queens crossovered quite a bit there early on, as they were probably
Nice.
trying to gain some steam. But yeah, this one looked fun,
Sure.
so we're going for it.
Awesome. Well, definitely let us know what you think about that. Give it a watch. Send us your thoughts, or come hang out with us in the chat live. We record every Monday night at 9 Eastern. Be like A Stigma and Jeff DeBow and let's see who else is in here.
Stealth Dad was in here.
Stealth Dad. Come hang out. Come talk to us. We love it. We love to hear from you live, or we'd love to hear from you through email or socials, whatever. We want to know what you think and what you like. So definitely let us know. But until next time, and King of Queens, for Steven, for Amy, for Travis, I'm Audie. This has been Those Were the Days. Go enjoy some nostalgic TV, and we will see you next time.